Hi guys, it's Fiona here from Lavender Blue. In this video I'm going to be showing you how I create a vintage looking journal cover, and I'm using a second-hand book cover for this. So here I'm just removing the pages. So you just need a craft knife or a box cutter like what I'm using here, and when you look in the front and back of the book, you can see where it's stitched onto the spine, and you can just cut down and remove your pages. So this is going to be quite a grungy looking cover, really vintage, and I'm going to be using some old sewing patterns and also some napkins for the outside cover. So this will be a series where I'm making this vintage journal from start to finish. So this is the first video just doing the cover, and I played around with the idea here of covering the outside with some white paper first, because I wanted a white background to be able to put the rest of the layers on the top, but then I decided to go with gesso. I thought it would be easier just to paint some gesso on, so I'm doing that now. These old Reader's Digest books are a perfect size for making a journal. I really love using them. So I'm just going to let the gesso dry completely. So yeah, when it's dry, just get yourself some PVA glue and mix it with a tiny bit of water, just so that it's a bit easier to spread. Or you could use your Mod Podge, and I'm using a sponge brush for this, but you could just use some sort of a flat brush. So I'm going to glue down this old vintage sewing pattern, and this one I found in a second-hand shop here in Australia, and I think it was from the 1950s or something like that, so it's quite old. And all I'm doing here is putting some glue underneath and then over the top, working my way down. And I'll glue a couple of layers of this on, because, well, for one reason is that this particular sewing pattern had a lot of white space. There wasn't like a lot of interest or words going on, so I wanted to, glue down some extra pieces. But the other reason is that it will give you a darker finish, so like more of a darker sepia vintage colour if you put a couple of layers on. And at this point I'm not worried about the pieces hanging over the edge, because all you do is you can either tuck them into the front cover and glue them down, or just rip them off. So I think I ended up folding them over into the inside. And make sure you glue it down right into those little grooves on either side of the spine, just because if you don't make sure that's glued in properly, it'll start lifting up. Just mixing a bit more PVA glue here with a bit of water, and then I'm going to add a few more pieces of this the sewing tissue. If you don't have any of these old sewing patterns, another thing that you could do is you could use just some normal tissue paper. Say if you get some white tissue paper, you could just do some stamping all over it, like with a permanent black or brown ink, and then glue that down, because later on I'm going to be showing you how you can give it more of a vintage-y finish. So even if you had a white tissue paper, you can still make it a nice vintage colour. So then I decided I wanted to glue this large piece over the whole lot. So here you can see me starting to glue some of it to the inside, and I'm not worried about how messy it is on the inside at this point, because when we get to that, probably in the next video, I'll be covering the inside with something else, so that will get covered over. And I probably should have waited until the front of the cover was dry before I did this, but I'm a little bit impatient, so and I haven't made a video for quite a while, so it's just I was sort of been busy with other things, but I'm planning on getting into making a lot more videos again, so I'm looking forward to that. And on my website, some people are having trouble with the password getting into the free printables library. I did send out a new password a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's working for most people, but some people are saying it won't work. So I'm going to have to look into that because it is working for me too. So I don't really know why it doesn't work for some people. So I apologise for that, but I will look into it. So for the next layer, this is where I'm going to be using some napkins, and I found these beautiful like poppy napkins, absolutely gorgeous, so I thought I'll use those. Just ripping off some excess pieces inside that didn't actually glue down properly. So as you know, napkins they're usually 2 or 3 ply, so you'll have to remove the backing layers so that you've just got the one top layer before you glue it down. So it's the same glue, I'm just getting it ready. And I was just saving those white pieces of napkin too, because you could always stamp on those as well and use them in another project. So I've decided that I'm going to use the whole napkin, because you can, if you want to, you could tear it into little pieces or into smaller pieces and just put bits of napkin here and there. So I'm going to use this whole napkin because it has a fair bit of white space anyway. A good way of tearing it is to just wet it with a brush like I was doing there. You just wet it where you actually want to tear it, and it will tear in that particular spot. And you'll see that even though the napkin is white, when you glue it down, it's going to be clear. So you'll be able to see this background through the napkin. And I did put glue underneath to start it off, but you really don't need to, because the glue actually goes straight through the napkin, so it'll go through to the underside anyway. But I don't know, I just wanted to make doubly sure that I didn't have air bubbles. I mean, there's a lot of creases and that's okay, I wanted the creases to give it texture, but I just don't want air bubbles, because if there's air bubbles it won't stick properly. And when this is dry, we can just tear off the edges of the napkin as well. And you can leave your cover just like this if you like it. You may not want to go on to the next step, which darkens it all up a little bit more. So I'm just using my heat tool. Well, it's not a heat gun because I don't have one, but it's an old hairdryer to speed it up a little bit. I don't know why I filmed this part, sorry. Normally I would cut this out. So there we go. I'm just going to rip off the excess of that napkin now. You can just tear it like this, or you can use a wet paintbrush, wet the edges, and that makes it easier to get off. I think you'll see me do that in a minute. Beautiful napkin, this one. It's the only one that I had. I think this was gifted to me by the lovely Nat Williams from Paper, what's her group called? Paper Possibilities and Crazy Crafters. That's her Facebook group. So thank you for that, Nat. Okay, so I'm back again for the final layer, or final couple of layers. So what you need is some gel medium and a little bit of brown paint, which could be a burnt umber. I think here I'm using raw umber. I used raw umber first and I wasn't really happy with my results. So I ended up doing another layer with raw umber as well. So what we're doing is we're making a glaze basically, so it'll give it a nice vintagey colour. I was just explaining here that the different gel mediums, so I've got a gloss one, and I think the other one, the Derivan one, is kind of a semi-gloss, but they are a water-based medium for use with acrylic paints. That's what they're for, but us crafters also use them as a glue and for as a sealer as well. So in my first layer I used up my tube of the glossy one and just mixed it in with a little bit of raw umber. Sorry, yes, raw umber. I did record this and I was speaking while I recorded it, but when I played it back the sound was very, very quiet. You couldn't hear what I was saying, so that's why I'm doing this voiceover instead. So it's just a matter of trial and error as to how much paint you want to mix with your gel medium, because you don't want it to be opaque, but you know you want it dark enough so that it does tint your cover. And also, you know, a matter of playing around with the different types of brown. You might also want to use a like one of the siennas, like a burnt sienna, if you want more of a reddish brown. So I did put this one on, and then I thought for me it wasn't dark enough, so I end up doing another layer, which you'll see. So the gel medium is cloudy when it's wet, but as it dries clear, so you won't get that cloudy look once it's dry. And after I've done the first page here, you can just see the difference of how that's slightly darker now than the other page. You just want a slight hint of colour. Well, if that's the look that you want. I wanted mine to be a little bit darker and grungier. That's why I ended up going in and adding another layer. So you need to let this dry completely, because even if it's a little bit sticky, if you go in and try to put on the next layer, you could potentially tear up the other layers from underneath. So just make sure it dries completely before you do another layer. And that does look nice just as it is. So if you want just a very, very slight hint of our vintage colour, then you can leave it like that. It also gives it a nice glossy finish when it dries with the gel medium, which is why I like using it. So I've got some burnt sienna, I think that one is. It's not very dark though, it's usually a little bit darker than that. This is the umbers. So these are burnt umber. The first one I used was raw umber. So now I'm trying the burnt umber. Then I'm using my other tub of gel medium. So you can see that that mix is a lot darker than the last one that I did. just tested a little bit out there and decided it might have been a little bit too dark, so I'm just adding a bit more gel medium there. So because, as I said, as the gel medium is cloudy, it looks like it's going to be cloudy or darker than what it actually is when it dries, because that dries clear. But I did get a nice dark grungy finish at the end, which is what I wanted, but you could still see the poppies and the writing underneath, and it looks really nice. Almost there now. So in the next video, what I'll be doing is doing the inside cover and then sewing in the signatures. I'll just wait for that to dry and I'll show you what it looks like. So there you go, that's my finished cover. I hope you like it and I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Okay, so for